So we're going to, Duncan's actually come here to talk about the latest research in spinal cord injury. And I'll introduce Duncan more formally in a little while. We've got Tony, who's going to talk about Ambulance Authorised General Care Plans for adults. And Suzie will then guide us through a Q&A session about your experiences and the gaps that you see in general health services. Okay, so... Sorry, I just have to turn this off. I can't see. So we'll tell you a little bit about Duncan. So Duncan is the Executive Director for SpinalCure Australia. SpinalCure... Yeah, it was the one that your EA gave me. So sorry.
She's being kind to me.
It's a good photo. You look very professional there, Duncan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. SpinalCure Australia.
Anymore.
SpinalCure Australia focuses on research identification, awareness and advocacy that fosters collaboration between researchers across the globe and channels sponsors funding into the most promising research for spinal cord injury. Their role is to also influence government policy and where government research funding should be spent. Duncan joined SpinalCure in 2011 as the Chief Executive Officer. He was elected on the board in 2016. And since 2020, Duncan has focused on guiding SpinalCure's research aims and promoting the cause through speaking arrangements like the one he's doing here. Duncan will be presenting on the latest spinal cord injury research. So welcome, Duncan. I hope I did justice.
Thank you. Yes, I always sound grand when people introduce me. It's always a bit embarrassing. Yeah, I handed over the, thank you very much, and hello to everybody. I handed over that CEO role to Catherine Borkovic a couple of years ago. She is way better at it than I was, and has the energy really to take Spinal Cord Cure to the next level. We're growing fast. You know, when you consider back in 2011 or 12 it was, when I came on board, I was the first full-time employee. So they'd had a part-time executive officer before that, but so it was a bit of a change for the organization back then, but we're now, there's only 5 of us, but we are kicking some goals, I'm pleased to say. I was supposed to be talking to you all this time last year, but ended up in hospital, got carted off with a twisted gut, and 2.5 months in hospital, and 5 operations later they let me out. I think, you know, I've been in the chair 40 years now, and my digestive system's a mess, but I don't think I need to tell anyone here what a nightmare spinal cord injury is. You really just have to suck it up and get on with it. I have a mantra. It's every morning. It's suck it up, get up, dress up, and show up. And it's not always easy thing to do, as you all know. And I guess what really bugs me is that mantra is still needed. Now, SpinalCure has been funding cutting-edge research for 30 years, and we've had some of the brightest minds in the world studying this problem for decades. So why the hell don't we have a cure yet? I mean, I get up every morning wondering what's going on. Where's this cure that's been promised every 5 years for the last 40 years? But the short answer, I guess, is that the spinal cord is an incredibly complicated piece of kit. I was up visiting Mark Rutenberg and his team in the University of Queensland recently, and you know, I always thought we've been helping support their research for many years, and I always thought I was quite bright, and but when these young kids, they're all in their early 20s, who were his research group, when they started explaining what they were doing to me, I suppose I kept up for about a sentence and then just felt the breeze on the top of my bald patch as it flew over the top of my head after that. It is so complicated what they're dealing with, and it really gives you some respect for the complexity of the problem when you hear them talk. I was just nodding when what I hoped were sensible places. I guess the point is that the spinal cord injury is spinal cord is much more than just a bunch of nerves transmitting messages. You need to think of it as an extension to the brain. It really is incredibly complicated. So trying to repair it is it's a big job. But trying to repair it is what we're here to do. And I guess doing that, unfortunately, the good science is difficult. It's incredibly expensive and hugely time consuming. I mean, it takes years, even decades, for clever ideas to be ready to test in people. And then every clinical trial costs several million, and you usually need 3 of those. So, we are probably talking from some bright idea to actually having a treatment available to people. It could be a 20-year process. We are trying to cut corners on that through various things, one of which I'll talk about in a couple of examples later, but things like using existing drugs that have already been through their safety trials and are already being used in other for other conditions, but that have never been tried in spinal cord injury before, and that might have some serious benefit. So there's quite a bit going on that area, which I'll talk about in a minute. The other issues, I guess, is that compared with other medical conditions like cancer and cardiovascular problems, there aren't very many of us with spinal cord injuries. There's 21,000 at the last count. So we don't attract the big bucks so easily from government, even though spinal cord injury costs the Australian economy some $3.7 billion a year. You would think that chucking 100 million here and there into the research would be a no-brainer, but it's not easy to persuade them to do that. But look, it's not all doom and gloom. SpinalCure and other like-minded organizations are working hard on this, and I'm very happy to say that there is light at the end of that tunnel. And no, it's not an oncoming train. It's real daylight. We're currently developing a national roadmap to a cure, which it's a comprehensive plan of attack to develop Australia's research capacity, and not just in terms of funding the research itself. We've been talking to scientists, funders, government, other stakeholders, including spinal cord injuries organizations like SCIA, about what's needed in our space. So not only in terms of research itself, but the other aspects, such as educating GPs and clinicians. What we found is that so much of the very latest research findings aren't getting into the hands of the clinicians and your GPs, so that they're not being used. They're not being used by the people who could actually benefit. And also educating those of us in chairs so that we know exactly what to do to be cure fit, if you like, to maintain our bodies in the best possible condition to make use of emerging therapies as they come along. One of the issues there is that people don't realize, I suppose, is that after years in a chair, the nerves that you're not using below the level of injury and the associated spots in the brain start degenerating and get used for other things, or they just die off. And then if you even repair the bit across the damage there, the nerves aren't there connecting the muscles up. So, you know, it's a much bigger job than to grow neurons the 2 feet down to your legs than it would be if you'd kept those nerve pathways in good condition through things like FES cycling and feedback, neurostimulation feedback. So there's this roadmap that we're trying to develop. It's a lot more than just we need a lot of money and this is the research we're going to support. You know, the financial estimates for this are upward of $80-odd million over the next 5 years at the moment, and I think it's going to climb quite a bit higher than that. But when you consider that in 5 years, spinal cord injury will have cost the country, what's that, 3.79, somewhere like about $18 billion in 5 years, if my maths is right. But so, you know, 100 million, as I said, shouldn't be a big ask over 5 years. But that money is going to largely come, I suspect, from philanthropy, not government. And we, you know, we have some wonderful, wealthy funders who come to the party on these things, and we're very, very grateful to. Now, I like to think about that cure as a journey where, you know, every step brings meaningful improvements, and I guess those steps, we could say they're being taken right now, in some cases literally, with some of the neurostimulation research. We had a milestone of our own last year. We completed the world's first fully blinded trial of neurostimulation, when we have 50 volunteers through our, and yes, it's done it again, the EWalk trial, and that's E-walk, as in ambulation, not as my spelling dictation software Siri has put it here as E-walk, as in the furry little beastie in a galaxy far, far away. So, I must write something that automatically changes those when I'm dictating stuff to my notes. Where was I? Oh yes, EWalk and EWalk. So we haven't got the results of EWalk yet. What I can tell you is this involved targeting walking. People were doing 12 sessions 3 times a week with the so half of them getting proper stimulation, half of them getting fake stimulation. But they all had this intensive walking exercise. And all I know at the moment that I can tell you is that everybody improved. So it didn't seem to make, so far we don't know if the people who got the stimulation improved more, but it just shows how important that things like these walking treatments, people were suspended in harnesses above a treadmill if they were not weight bearing properly, but every one of them improved their ability to take steps. So this shows that importance of rehab and ongoing rehab, something that is horribly underfunded. We have the state-of-the-art the Royal Rehab, but that's unique in this country. You know, if you injure yourself south of the river and you do your rehab at Prince of Wales, you get you don't have access to that sort of equipment that they've got up there at Royal Rehab, and that's something that needs addressing. And you know, it's not really in our remit because we are focused on the research for a cure, but it's something we would encourage SCIA and other organizations in the care front to follow. You know, so I was saying about how long it's taking to get to a cure, but over the last decades, I guess those sharp-minded people I mentioned have been building up our knowledge. And there's a bunch of treatments that are being tried in people and across the world. They do include stem cells, which to date haven't lived up to their potential, or their hype, should I say. But I'm pretty sure that there's a lot more to come from them once they work out how to use them properly. Drug therapies and novel molecules, I think, is the one that's going to really help. These drugs not only control inflammation, which is a big issue, and my camera isn't working. Interesting. Have I disappeared?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's annoying. Where am I? Is that me there?
We can hear you.
Okay. Well, what I should do, the trouble is, will that allow me? I wonder if I've got might have some slides here that I could use. Try another device. See, I told you that my Teams doesn't love me.
They don't play nicely, Macs and Teams.
No.
Oh, you're back. So they
I'm
didn't
back.
like us calling them names.
No. Alrighty. Good. So where was I? Oh, it's drug therapies. Yeah, to calm down the inflammatory response that happens in early injury and causes so much of the damage in addition to the initial trauma, but also later to stimulate neurogenesis, or the growth of nerves in the spinal cord. So I think that's going to be a big one. And there's various forms of stimulation. These, not just the neurostimulation where we're stimulating the spinal cord itself, but also stimulating the brain. There's some very interesting work going on, talk about in a minute, up in Griffith about using this one. And that's both in actual physical stimulation and magnetic stimulation. There's cybernetics, biomaterial scaffolds, where they actually plug something into the gap in your spinal cord to provide an environment that encourages nerves to regrow. So there's a lot going on. The ultimate cure is definitely going to be a combination of treatments. It's going to need a whole bunch of things. Something first off to control the inflammatory response, and then a bunch of treatments, including intensive exercise to actually get you better. I don't think it's just going to be pop a pill and you're done, although that would be nice. But let me quickly tell you about a couple of the projects. How long have I got, by the way? I don't want to take up all the time here. I could speak forever. I'll keep going for a bit, but tell me when I'm going overboard. So a couple of the things that we're sponsoring first. One that, in conjunction with Forward Ability Support, who, as you know, they're the holding company for Bright Sky, and where we will get our supplies. But Forward Ability Support and SpinalCure have partnered to fund a Forward Fellowship. Now, this is supporting a young researcher up at the University of Queensland. If I've got, am I able to present here? Is that possible?
We'll stop sharing.
See if I can share something. Can you see that? Good enough now?
Yeah.
I won't try presenting it full team or whatever. Here we are. Laura Grice, I was talking about. This is the young lady here in the flowers. She is a computer genius. This is Mark Rutenberg. And this is the young people. You can see the age that were just blinding me with science when I was up there last week, a couple of weeks ago. They really are truly inspiring and dedicated and so enthusiastic for the work that they're doing. And I thoroughly enjoyed my time up there. This is Laura at her work, and she is, we have the advantage these days that they didn't have a few years ago, and that's the ability to use supercomputers and machine learning and artificial intelligence to analyze extraordinary amounts of data. I mean, Laura can now look at data in weeks, in a way that would have taken many years to do before. So she is trying to she describes it as a Google map of the spinal cord at the time of injury. So she's taking all this enormous amount of data and analyzing what cells are there, what molecules, what proteins are there in the spinal cord at the time of injury. And not only at the time of injury, but right through as you go on your journey through to getting out of hospital the other side, and how those interact, how they change over time. And what she's also discovered is that depending on where you have your injury, that molecular environment changes. So it's different for somebody with a thoracic injury than those of us with neck injuries. I tried to make sense. She codes herself. She writes the programs that analyze this stuff. And she's doing this with the aim of being able to customize treatments for people at different levels and with different severities of injury, but also to analyze very, very quickly whether there are drugs out there on the market which might be able to affect some of these molecules in a way that'll bring benefits to people. And then she feeds that data to the rest of the team, and they do the actual physical experiments in mice and rat models to see if those drugs then work. And eventually they'll hopefully have a whole bunch of targets to take into clinical trial for people, which it's kind of mind-blowing what they're doing, but having the power of UQ's supercomputers to actually do this is a real boon. So Mark Rutenberg here, I've spoken about him before to you, but he's the one that's run the IVIG trial as well, which is an existing drug. It's a CSL drug, intravenous immunoglobulin. And if you can get that into people within the first 12 hours of injury, you can prevent a lot of that permanent damage happening in the first place. It calms down the bad aspects of the inflammatory response. A few years ago, there were a bunch of boys who bust their necks playing rugby at school. And it's quite a few years ago now, but the two of those up in Queensland were lucky enough to get on the trial, and both managed to walk out of hospital. So that's the extent. They were complete quadriplegics when they went in with the injury. They had the drug within 12 hours. Both walked out. One of them is extremely good, very little neurological damage. The other, Connor Tweedy, if he has to go more than 100 meters, he will use a wheelchair. But otherwise, walking around the home, and once he gets to his front door, he leaves his wheelchair at the door and walks around the house. And it's huge difference. So obviously there's nothing we can do about the initial damage after the accident, but the secondary damage we can hopefully very soon be able to help there. That drug, we're wanting that to go into a stage 2 trial very soon, but there's quite a lot of money to raise. We need about probably 10 million to kick off there, and the support of CSL to supply the drug. But then that would go to all the trauma centers in the country, and probably a couple of overseas to get the numbers up. So that'll be pretty exciting. Obviously, it doesn't do any of us in this forum any good, but we'd like to be able to sort of switch that tap off a little bit and have fewer people with complete injuries. All right. Oh, my favorite. This is my favorite. This young fella, Dr. Ramon Martinez Marmol. We have just given him the I. Peter Farrell SpinalCure Fellowship, which is a $1.5 million fellowship over 5 years. And Laura herself was a runner-up in this, but the fellowship went to Ramon. He's at the Queensland Brain Institute, and he has discovered, well, he's affectionately known as the worm guy. He's been working with this 1 millimeter long nematode worm here, which you see on screen, which is has this magical ability to repair its own spinal cord. So he uses lasers to cut the spinal cord nerves of this little worm, and the little worm just super glues them back together again and carries on as though you haven't done anything. Now, it's a molecule called a fusogen, but yeah, he describes it as superglue, and he's discovered the gene which controls this molecule and the ability to do that, and he has isolated that same gene in the mammal's genome, and it just shows you how much alike we are with worms. But he, over the 5 years of this fellowship, is hoping to develop a mechanism whereby he can use a virus to switch on that gene in the mammalian genome, and with hopefully one day being able to take this into clinical trial and for people. So it's pretty exciting, but there's a little part of me that worries on this one. If you have an accident in the lab when you're working with spiders and you become Spider-Man, well, that's great, but I don't know that Worm Man has quite the same appeal. It's Worm Man. There's another, I haven't got a picture of it here. There's another bit of research that has been a long time coming, and we started funding this in 2006 when it was just an idea. It's a molecule by the name of EPHA4 that encourages nerve growth and also helps with that inflammatory response. It's our co-founder, who is now Emeritus Professor Perry Bartlett, who was the main researcher on this. Now that's been through a clinical trial with motor neurone disease now, and the results were very good. It was only a few people. Results came out just before Christmas, but it stopped the motor neurone symptoms in their tracks. And although it's early stages yet, the people who were treated and they were not getting any worse. They're not getting any better, but they're not getting any worse, which for somebody with motor neurone disease is huge. Now, the original preclinical testing on this drug were done for spinal cord injury. So we are hoping that this will go into a stage 2 trial for spinal cord injury fairly soon. I'll keep you in touch with that one. Let me go on to our Project Spark, which is the neurostimulation project. We have 3 trials up and running on this one at the moment, which you'll be interested about. Most of you have heard about this. Neurostimulation involves using tailored pulses of electricity into your spinal cord, trying to sort of wake up any nerve pathways which survived that initial break. So there's, when you look at your X-rays, usually there's a bit of your spinal cord still happy in there and a chunk that's not. Well, the brain still tries to squeeze messages down through that surviving tissue. And if you can wake it up with some of these electrical pulses, we're hoping that that will then allow the brain and body to talk again. The world passed a bit of a huge milestone just before Christmas when the FDA in America approved the first treatment using, it's a startup called Onward, based out of the work that's going on in Switzerland. So they now have approval for their stimulator to be used for the general public. Now, I must caution you on this one. The FDA does state in their release for that there is actually no evidence that it actually works, only that it's safe. And this is why SpinalCure has decided to do the hard yards, which is the fully blinded cutting-edge clinical trials on this, because no one else in the world's done them. So nobody else has actually proved that this neurostimulation works and that it's not just the exercise that's making the difference, because all these treatments come with a certain amount of physical exercise. Now, I'm pretty convinced that there's a lot in neurostimulation. I went on one of the trials myself, and even after 40 years, it managed to stabilize my blood pressure when I had the stimulation on, which was huge for me, and also reduced spasm quite considerably. And I'm still working on it, but there appears to be one of my wrist extensors that I don't normally have has come back, which is kind of nice. Anyway, so yes, I was talking about what's involved with a blinded trial as opposed to the sort of small trials that they've done before. In the blinded trial, neither the person getting treated nor the scientist has any clue whether they're getting the real stimulation or a fake stimulation. So that's the important side of that, and its numbers as well. The ones we've got up and recruiting at the moment, EWalk, if you happen to be in Sydney, Melbourne or Perth at the moment, it's probably going to go to other sites. There's more than one site in Sydney recruiting. 16 years or older. It doesn't matter whether you're a quadriplegic or a paraplegic, but you need to be able to have some movement in one or more of your legs. So that is up and running 3 times a week for 12 weeks. It's a big commitment, but as I said, in EWalk 1, which had much more, oh, hang on, I'm getting ahead of myself. EWalk 1, which has now completed, we know that everybody got some benefit. We just don't know whether any of that benefit came from the stimulation, but we will soon. Okay, that's recruiting. Get a grip. No prizes for guessing what that one's targeting, which is upper limb and breathing, hand function. This one's, 5 different places in Sydney now, including opening up on the Northern Beaches here, which I'm pleased about. But Perth, I'm going over there next week to launch the Perth site. Canberra and over in Auckland with our colleagues at Catwalk. So that one involves obviously quadriplegics, because we're talking about upper limb, and you just need to be 1 year post-injury, and it doesn't matter whether you're complete or incomplete on Get a Grip. So that one it's worth doing. That's the one I went on, and even after 40 years, I thought it was valuable. Unfortunately, all the benefits I had disappeared while I was in hospital. So I would like to do it again, and there might be a possibility I can, but in the other cohort that's testing 2 different types of stimulation. So that'll be good. If you happen to be in Melbourne, you'll notice they're missing on this, but Professor Mary Galea down there is also running a similar trial using the Scone SpineX's stimulator, which SpineX is a startup from Professor Reggie Edgerton, who some of you may have heard of. He's the founder of all this neurostimulation research from UCLA, California. And they're running a trial down there, and they need extra volunteers. So similar thing to the Get a Grip, but in Melbourne. I'm probably taking up way too much time here, so I will whisk on. Where are we at? Some of the other ones that we're not directly involved with. Sylvia Gustin, we did manage to raise the money for this through the New South Wales government, but she was able to secure some. She's got a whole bunch. She's at the University of New South Wales, an incredibly dynamic researcher. This is one I just picked out, which is Restore Sensation. It's recruiting at the moment, and it's home-based. So is this one. You get the treatment at home, which is nice. Take the stimulator home. This one's also home-based using VR and feedback sensations through this clever little gadget they put under your foot to actually, when you're looking through those VR goggles and you swing your arms, you can see your legs walking, and you walk around this virtual environment. I was able to give it a go when I visited her lab, and it's kind of fun. So that's an interesting one, but targeting sensation. Most of the other ones Sylvia's got underway are targeting pain. So she's well worth talking to for anybody with severe neuropathic pain. The other one that I thought I'd highlight is BioSpine, which is, you may have heard of Dinesh Palipana, who is a phenomenal gentleman who's joined our board of directors. He is quadriplegic himself. He's also a lawyer and a doctor and a researcher. So brain the size of a planet and a big heart to match. Very nice guy. He's working with a team in Griffith University, and they've got a very interesting system going up there. It's a combination of a brain-machine interface neurostimulation and a drug therapy that they're developing in the hope that that will restore significant function. And it's a big commitment, that one. So you're looking 2 to 4 times a week for 6 months. But can be complete or incomplete. Just need to be 2 years post-injury and over 18. So that one's interesting. So yes, I should wrap up. I guess the pace of progress does seem glacially slow at times, but things are happening, and I'm hoping that we'll start seeing some of these therapies available for people. They're not a cure, any of them, but they hopefully will make a difference. So that's about where we are in Australia at the moment. I don't know how I unshare. That's how do I do that? Oop, there we go. I'm back. There's a few other things happening around Australia. I dare say a lot of you have heard of what's going on with the other project that they're recruiting for at Griffith with Professor James St. John that Perry Cross Foundation's been supporting. I don't know a huge amount about that. I can't really comment on how good I think it's going to be because they haven't released any preclinical data. There's IP issues, so we've got nothing to judge it on. But what they're doing is taking cells from your nose, creating or multiplying those in the lab and creating a scaffold with them. They sort of 3D print them into a scaffold that fits your damaged spine. Then put those into the spine and hopefully they will encourage nerve growth or provide the environment that will encourage nerve growth. But at the moment it's a very big operation and we just don't, there's been a lot of money put into that research and we haven't seen any results yet, but I've got my fingers crossed. I don't care where this cure comes from. I just want it to come from somewhere. So, yeah, questions? Has anybody got any?
My question is, what happens if you don't live anywhere near where these places are having trials?
Now, we do have funding. If you're in WA, we've got funding to actually put you up in hotel in Perth for the duration of the trials. There in New South Wales, there is a government scheme called IPTAS, IPTAAS, where we can secure funding for travel and for hotel bills for the duration of the trial. So there are ways around that. Not at the moment in Victoria or Queensland, but we are working on that and trying to get other private funding for people. So if people do want to be on the trials and they don't live anywhere near, they need to talk to us and we can see what we can do about providing funding. As long as you can commit to the time, have a holiday in the capital sometime.
Okay, thank you.
Jamie, there is another question.
Oh, hi, Duncan. Very interesting talk. It's fascinating and all the geniuses doing that amazing work.
Oh, yeah,
I wish I was as clever. I am interested in, you mentioned ongoing rehab for people to make sure that their muscles and nerves were able to receive these new improvements, etc. In NDIS, a lot of people, including myself, have had to fight for ongoing physiotherapy, exercise physiology, and often it's been stated that it's rehab and not NDIS's responsibility. So that shifting of money from health to NDIS and back and forward, etc. So just interesting on your thoughts on that and ongoing assistance to increase physio and exercise physiology for people.
It is a problem. I'm having a battle there with my own NDIS funding right now. I don't have sufficient funding for any exercise. Well, I've got, if a session a month or something over the year, it's not going to do very much good. So it is something that needs changing. It's not only the funding, but also the facilities. I think false economy, not putting money into it. I think if we could, we really need to get the numbers crunched by a respectable firm that that does that sort of thing, in order to have something to take to government to say, this is false economy. You're going to save a lot more money in healthcare costs if you put the money into keeping people healthy in the first place. And
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
it's to me, it's like funding stand-up wheelchairs. I have a stand-up wheelchair, but I had to fight for it, and it was really only because I work full-time, and so don't have a carer with me, that I was able to get the stand-up chair. But with the stand-up chair, I haven't had a pressure injury in 20 years.
Oh,
So,
that's fabulous. Yeah.
not one day in bed with a pressure sore. Now, or no hospital visits. So you think of the money they've saved just in my hospital visits.
Yes.
And the other thing,
I,
on the stand-up chairs, is no bladder infections either.
yes. Yes.
So
It's I go to the wonderful Neuro Moves with the Spinal Cord Injury Association, and every report that I have for ongoing funding with NDIS and reviews is, this is not rehab, in capital letters, underlined and bolded. And I ask the therapist to do that, to say this is ongoing, maintaining your physical well-being, stop preventing falls, maintaining stamina, fitness, etc. And I've had some success using that.
yes,
But definitely bold, this is not rehab.
Good point. Okay, yeah, we have a great deal of affection for Neuro Moves. So they are doing all the treatments in our Project Spark clinical trials. So all the treatments, well, the majority anyway, are being done through Neuro Moves clinics around the country.
Yes, I've seen them in action. So, thanks again, Duncan. I'll let somebody else ask a question.
I believe, Duncan,
Elizabeth.
that anybody who gets NDIS is very lucky, because I was over 65. I get
That's another thing that desperately needs changing.
I've been in a care home since this injury. It's not really fair.
Not at all. And there has been a lot of pressure to change that. As far as I know, they're not going to change people over 65 into the NDIS, but the pressure is to make another level of aged care funding, which is the equivalent to your NDIS budget. Now, I see some nodding from various people who probably know a lot more about that than I do.
Can say when.
Yeah. Suzie?
I think we better not go down this path too much in the interest of time. But yes, there has been another level added. It's not enough. We've got a statement. We're working on it. I think, David, I'm happy to, we've actually been talking to some of your peers, convene another meeting of this over 65s group, because it's not fair. I'm not taking it off my agenda. The most recent policy briefings on the website, we have got the other level. There is an increase, but it's not enough. And you know that well, David, and it isn't fair. But I'm going to move on to Elizabeth, just in the interest of time, because we've devoted a couple of forums to that issue, and I think we need to move on. But David, I will talk to you again, and we will convene another over 65s meeting. So if anyone else is over 65 and wants to join that meeting, send us an email at representative, because we won't let it go.
Me, but thankfully I had my injury prior. So it really isn't fair.
It's not fair.
Yeah.
Elizabeth.
Hi, guys. I noticed, Duncan, that you talked about the brain being able to distinguish certain areas of the body, like the hand and the arm and the foot and the leg. And we had a chap here a researcher here, Gary Thickbroom, some time ago, who had done some research on that and was able to identify where everything lived and then if everything was still functioning and being recognised as such. Is there a time frame on that? Does that diminish over a period of time, like you said, with not using the body? Then there's lack of stimulation. Does that deteriorate?
Well, there is the danger of the nerves in the spinal cord degenerating below the injury. But I mentioned Sylvia Gustin. She's the one that came up with this definition of dyscomplete, where something over 50% of people who are diagnosed as ASIA A, and complete, no feeling, no motor, if you put them in an MRI machine, and it doesn't seem to matter what length of time they've been injured, put them in an MRI machine with their head being checked, and you tickle their toes, even if they can't feel or have no clue that their toes are being tickled, the area of the brain which registers that function lights up. So she's calling them dyscomplete, where there is still a connection there, just not functional. So I would imagine there is some degeneration over the years, but not as much as you might think.
Okay, thank you.
Having 40 years down the track, I can still feel a lot, and especially my knee at the moment, because I drove into the desk yesterday, and it's not meant to be able to feel it, but I bloody well can.
Lucy? Lucy? No, maybe she's
got a hand up.
Yeah, maybe she didn't unintentionally.
Where are you, Elizabeth? It looks beautiful.
I'm sitting in Panamonica because we're on holidays travelling. We're going up to Broome, and the weather is absolutely gorgeous.
Thanks.
Can we kick Elizabeth out, please?
Yeah, Lucy removed her
Enjoy.
hands. Yeah.
Sorry, that was not on purpose. I apologize.
Gordana, you're talking, but you're not, and I can see you're not on mute, but I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Duncan. That was
Pleasure.
fabulous, and I can see a lot of people are really interested in the work that you guys are doing, and it's fantastic that you're out there actually getting the big bucks in and getting the research done that's needed in this space. So thank you very much for
We're
coming.
trying.
It was good.
And
Okay.
we're not doing it in isolation, and we do appreciate all the support we get from you guys. And it's really nice to collaborate with the other organizations. So we can't do it on our own.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
you
you all.
very much. Well, we were supposed to have a break now, but we've kind of gone over schedule. That's okay, Duncan. You're allowed. We kind of gone a bit over schedule. So I'm just wondering, are you guys okay if we continue? Is that okay with everybody? And Tony, I might just get you to start your bit. Do you want me to? I'll share the thing and then you take over. How about
can
that?
you share your screen?
I will. Okay. Should be coming up soon.
And while we're doing this, Elizabeth, I didn't really want to kick you out. I'm just jealous that you're in a nice warm place.
Okay.
For the
Tony,
record.
You can take over now, Tony. Just take control.
Okay, so New South Wales Ambulance Authorised General Care Plans for adults. Before I say anything, is anyone familiar with the unauthorised general care plan, or uses one currently? I gather that's a no.
crickets.
Okay, well, that's fine. They've been around for a little while. So I've changed my, can people see the first slide now with a bit of info on it?
Yes. We can see your slide. You see the info.
Okay. So a New South Wales Ambulance Authorised Adult General Care Plan was developed to enable paramedics to provide individualised care to the patient who requires specific treatment and or transport to a specific destination. The AGCP will provide paramedics with the plan, which has been developed by the medical practitioner in consultation with the patient and or the person responsible. They're a great tool to use because of what they offer. It allows for additional support or care to be given by the paramedic, such as a catheter change or catheter care. Paramedics provide this support as extended care paramedics with additional training. So as an example, if you are a quadriplegic living in a regional area, you might have written into your general care plan support to provide catheter care and changes. And it might include info such as this person is susceptible to catheter blocks and autonomic dysreflexia. So as most people I'm sure know on this forum what autonomic dysreflexia is, it usually affects anyone with a high level spinal cord injury, T6 and above. There's also a paediatric authorised care plan. So it's just a matter of filling in that authorised general care plan, getting it signed off from your GP or health professional, and then you submit it, and then the ambulance authority just needs to approve it. And so once that happens, they've got a record of it. And so whenever if you've ever had the need for an ambulance or you're caught short with a difficult situation and you don't have your usual carers around, they've got that information and they can send out an extended care paramedic to assist you with such things as catheters. So it's a very handy thing to utilise. There's also a paediatric authorised general care plan. And if you jump onto the website, I'll paste it into the chat in a sec, you'll see a list of a number of different details that can be downloaded, which covers advanced care directives, palliative fact sheets and care plans, and these general adult and paediatric care plans. You bear with me, I'll just put that link into the message just so you've got. Okay, I've just put that into the chat, so that's the link to it if you want to. And Gordana's going to, after we finish this, she's going to email out a copy of the care plan just for your own interest should you want to follow it up. The other thing I was going to talk about as I move to the next slide, has that moved?
Yes.
Yes, Tony, I moved it for you.
So there's also a New South Wales ambulance app. So if you do a search under New South Wales Ambulance CPG, I'm not really sure what the CPG stands for, but the app contains some worthwhile information if you're interested, specifically covering AD, autonomic dysreflexia. This is an autonomic dysreflexia protocol that goes into explaining what it is as a condition, but also how best to treat it. The site, the app's a little bit confusing to navigate, but it starts at level and it lists a series of headings. So you can click the extended care paramedic, and then that brings up a bunch of protocols. And if you click under medical surgical, it brings up a whole number of protocols, and one of those is the autonomic dysreflexia one. And if you click the specialised care, it brings up a new list covering different patient cohorts. And it has a specific one for people with disability. And it gives a definition as well as some top-line information and how best to assist with procedures for handovers. And when I say handovers, that's usually establishing what the disability is, whether it's physical and intellectual, and then just making sure that that's covered when they hand over to a health professional. Say if you're en route to an emergency, so that's just some additional information. The app itself is free to download. And you may just want to have it on your phone just for that information. I know I've spoken to people before that have said they've used the autonomic dysreflexia info just to be able to share, or if you happen to be traveling somewhere and you're nowhere near a specialised spinal unit, it's just good to be able to bring up that information and then pass it on to someone so they've got an idea of what you're talking about with an important medical emergency that autonomic dysreflexia is. So that information has been pretty much New South Wales centric. So I'm just going to share a bit of information with what's happening in other states. I contacted all state and territory ambulance services except Northern Territory. I've got correspondence from South Australia Ambulance Service, Victoria Ambulance and the ACT. So I'm very happy to share this information with anyone living in those areas who's on this forum. You can also visit their websites with some having more information than others. The ACT has an extended care paramedics operating that can do catheter care and changes. They can also provide support for dislodged gastronomy tubes, wound care and dressing changes. And they are trained also in treating autonomic dysreflexia. South Australia Ambulance does provide authorised care plans, but it's done more on a bespoke individual level, working with individuals. And they've also got extended care paramedics that can do catheter changes in emergency situations. And I did hear back from Victoria Ambulance as well, and I'm just going to quote what they've said. Ambulance Victoria does develop plans for frequent/complex patients. However, there is no form for external stakeholders to complete. Instead, it is a collaborative effort with the patient management team and external stakeholders and the patient for suitable patients who meet the criteria of being complex and frequently presenting. Alternatively, if the information can be provided in a few sentences, this can be done via a special patient alert that is applied to the patient's address. Unfortunately, their paramedics are not trained in specific catheter care, which I was a bit surprised by, actually, given, Victoria and the size of the state, second largest population in the country. So that was surprising. And on our website, they were probably the least informative in terms of, you know, just trying to search information. So I guess in a nutshell, other jurisdictions are doing a similar thing, but there doesn't appear to be a form like there is in New South Wales that you fill in. Yeah, but you know, if you're interested, I suggest visiting their websites, or like I said, I can share that correspondence. And that's about it really from me. I don't know if there's any questions. I know when we've brought this up before, a few years ago, and we did get Ambulance New South Wales out to Spinal Cord Injuries Australia, out to the office. It did generate some interest, and I do believe there were a few people in regional areas who were obviously a lot more vulnerable because, you know, you just don't have that ready access to a hospital, you know, within your area. And so they were taking advantage of these processes to receive that additional support. And it's a fairly simple thing to do. You know, it's just a form to fill out, get your doctor to sign it, and then it just gives you that extra sense of security.
That's great.
Tony.
Okay.
There is a question in the chat.
Ray, yeah.
I can't see that, yeah.
Yeah, go. And Tony, Ray is asking, can you get approval to bring wheelchair in ambulance?
Good point.
Yeah, that's a good question. But actually, in the app, there is some information about that. I just can't tell you off the top of my head what that policy is. And, well, actually, I do know. There's no way in the world you'd get a power wheelchair in the back of an ambulance. But yeah, there does appear to be some sort of information and acknowledgement of wheelchair users and how best to transfer people. But I think in terms of the wheelchair and transportation of it, it's virtually a negative if it's a power wheelchair, but manual wheelchairs may be another story.
And Raja said, thank you. That's informative, Tony. Catherine is also writing. I was taken to Tamworth Hospital last year and they took my manual wheelchair.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Tony. That was really good too. Suzie, we don't have a lot of time, so I'm not sure how you want to manage this.
That's okay. I'm known for talking fast anyway. So, but do you want to do that thing you did for Tony where you share and I take control? That would be great because I have been in meetings since 9:30 this morning and surviving on chocolate. If anyone's seen me nibbling. So, I mean, it's a good segue from ambulances. Thank you, Gordana. A really good segue from ambulances because I think this is what somewhat started our conversation. As you know, anyone who's been attending these forums regularly, we have our priority areas. You go to our website and you can see the advocacy priority areas. Housing, there's a team helping on that. Over 65s, equity, a team helping on that. Health is one of those areas. And one of the things that has come up, and Duncan actually mentioned the wonderful Danish, is people being very nervous, for example, going to hospital. Because you might go to hospital for one thing, but then find pressure or other things crop up as well. And there's not necessarily enough resources for people who are going to hospital with spinal cord injury. And Danish and his team on the Gold Coast have come up with some creative solutions to that. And there's, I think, people who are thinking about that. And we've been working with the Agency for Clinical Innovation, Affordability and PDCN on looking at that particular issue and how we might be able to resolve that. But it also comes to sort of other things and other access issues and what we want to do in this couple of minutes that we've got left and over the next few months as well is use your knowledge to create a policy brief that targets the key gaps in health for people with spinal cord injuries and other neurological conditions. We don't just want to keep raising the same old issues if they're not the issues that are mostly affecting you. So I know we have a number of people on this forum. I also know we have often over 100 viewers who watch after the event on our resource hub. So like message to you guys, I'm going to invite some general feedback in a minute, but also to anyone else who's watching later, we have an email address, representative@scia.org.au. Please send us emails about health issues, about the gaps. Put them in the chat, put them in, I'm getting distracted by the chat, so I'm actually not going to look at the chat. I'll let Liala do that because I can't multitask. So let us know in the chat, and Liala will manage it via your voice or via email later. So a little background as well. We did some amazing work before my time in advocacy while I was at SCIA, but not in advocacy, in 2021 and then across to 2023 with some other organisations listed here about access to, I'm losing my brain, access to, oh my goodness, what is it? It's imaging services. We had 112 people respond, 118 services had feedback given on them. As you can see, of all these services, there were quite a few who did have access issues, and those access issues, in 57% of experiences, there were barriers to access, and that's not going to surprise any of you. And looking at what those barriers were, obviously there was quite a lot that did have parking, quite a lot that had an accessible toilet. That's easy, but then, well, not easy, but it's something we should all expect. There were bigger gaps, and there was less access when we started looking at more detailed things like scales, a hoist, a height adjustable table, and sufficient room. There was a lack of assistive technology on the premises and a lack of knowledge as well from health professionals about disability awareness. A lot of pressure put on individuals to find alternative solutions where access was not available. I'm guessing no one's surprised. I can see there's some comments in the chat. There's additional travel costs, additional health risks, etc. So we found this out back in 2021. We sent letters off to the Premier. This was New South Wales research. We sent letters off to the Premier. We also sent letters off to the Health Minister. We received feedback that, yep, we'll forward this on to the correct people, etc. We hear you, but, the Health Minister said this is a New South Wales issue, and, things bounce a little bit, probably because of the complexity of it being public and private. And this was something that was referenced in both responses, because there are public facilities and private facilities. It's harder to regulate the private facilities. They all get Medicare funding though. So it shouldn't be thus. So this is what we did back in 2023. And we did receive responses. But probably I'm going to guess that if I did a little survey of you guys or the people watching, things haven't completely changed. We haven't seen the change we need to see from this work that we did. So we want to not lose that work. It's been a couple of years now. We want to pick that back up. And use this work with imaging and also more broadly. So we're working, as I said, on our policy brief. One of the things that Minister Butler, who was the Health Minister and is the Health Minister, said at the time is that the regulating body, that the Australian Commission for Safety and Quality in Healthcare reviews the accreditation standards for all these imaging services. And as luck would have it, the standards are being reviewed in 2025. So there is an opportunity for us to submit our the results of our survey and our recommendations again when the consultation is open for those standards. What we also want to do, though, in putting together this policy brief on health is incorporate other things, because I don't think it's just imaging services. I know from anecdotally talking to our members, it's not just imaging services that lack access. It's often GPs. It's hospitals, private and public. And again, I think circling back to the issue of going to hospital and how much I know through our emergency and occasional services and other services that people really are incredibly fearful for good reason of going into hospital. I notice, even I'm trying not to look at the chat, someone just put in the chat dentists as well. So there's lots of gaps. So in the next 8 minutes before we have to close, I'm really curious to look at the chat or have people come off mute and raise their issues. Obviously, we don't have a huge amount of time, but I encourage you to, what issues you've experienced. Are there barriers that you've experienced recently? What are the biggest gaps for you? Is imaging something that you've experienced in the last couple of years as a barrier, or are there other ones that we also need to pursue? Just in wrapping that before I throw out to you guys, we're representative advocacy, so we really want to be led by you guys watching later, or you guys in here now, to make sure that what we put out is representative of the barriers you're experiencing, and then we can work with you over the next couple of months to get some targeted solutions as well. That was a lot of talking. I might actually stop sharing because I like to see everyone's beautiful faces.
There are a couple of comments, Suzie, in the chats that I don't know if they want to read them or they want to talk, but Raja said non-spinal wards in the hospital often cause pressure areas. And she also add dentists and GPs in terms of lack of accessibility. And Catherine say being able to access bone density scan. We have one place in Tamworth that has an imaging machine, but is in a small room where you cannot fit the hoist, so cannot get up on table to get the scan. So it's like not having it at the end.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Raja. I don't know, Raja, would you like to elaborate?
I often have to actually stand up and hang on to something to get some imaging done on my body or even on my teeth because the rooms are so small. And I often have to take my manual wheelchair, which is a lot small, which makes it a lot harder for me because as my shoulders are, not very well. And a lot of hospitals, private and public, are not really equipped, especially for Mark, who's a quadriplegic, to try to organize a hoist to get him scanned or x-rayed. It's just a lot of work.
Yeah, thank you, Raja. I think we're not seeing improvements there since the work we did back in 2021, which is why we want to pick it back up and start raising that again. And your point about hospitals in the chat as well is something I think why I referred to Dinesh and the work that he does. And it's something that I've heard a lot and it really bothers me. So I'm also quite passionate about that. Catherine?
Yeah, I was just going to say, there's a couple of issues with the hospital as far as a lot of the time it's around having enough staff to be able to look after somebody that's got a spinal injury that cannot look after themselves or do anything for themselves. And so, and that's where the crossover from, say, NDIS, when you'll have your team of carers, but you're not meant to take them into hospitals and things like that. So, I think there's that real crossover with NDIS and health that needs to have some situations where it's a lot easier to continue to have your support workers with you in hospital, because they just don't have, until they have enough staff to be able to effectively, look after you. And it's also then the equipment that you need to take in possibly to hospital with you, commode chairs and stuff like that, because a lot of the time they don't have the necessary equipment that's suitable for you as a spinal cord injury person. I just found it
like, because last year I broke my leg and I had to, I've had all issues with that, but trying to get a bone density scan in Tamworth and like we're a major health place for the, northern New South Wales, and I could only just fit into this room in my manual wheelchair and turn around. But then the bed, like the bed thing that you've got to get on, was way too high for me to be able to transfer on myself. So, you can hardly get in there with a manual wheelchair, let alone a power wheelchair. And for somebody, that's a higher level than myself, that like we can't get a bone density scan, and let alone for, spinal cord people, but for old age people and everything, that's still going to be hard for them to get up onto a thing. And I just found it amazing that Tamworth, we don't have access easily that, for something like that, and there's not one at the hospital. So, it's having access to things, like that we really suffer from in rural land.
Thank you, Catherine. I think you raised something at the beginning there that Sarah Chesterman also put in the chat about being able to bring your carers into hospital. I've got to stop looking at that chat. I'm very good at this. And I think that raises a really important potential advocacy point for us. So we've got, our job is to identify these issues by talking to you, and then to also, by talking to you, identify some potential advocacy solutions and things we can advocate for with reasons why. So, thank you for sharing that, as well as access. I think someone else told us when they were RSVPing, they couldn't come, that, anyone who gets Medicare should probably be able to also have access. So that would apply to Tamworth as well. So thank you for sharing those two things. Does anyone else have their hand up?
Sarah shared another one. It's very difficult for community groups and allied health professionals to communicate with staff in hospitals or to get information out. So that transfer of information happens through me, and I easily miss things. My GOP finds it difficult. Yeah, thank you. My GP finds it difficult to provide up-to-date and clinically appropriate care. Health share could be used much more effectively to help transfer of information. That was
Thank
from
you,
Sarah.
Sarah.
As well.
And there are Raja and Jane that wants to add something, Suzie.
Okay, so we'll quickly just do Raja and Jane, and then I really encourage anyone else to put anything in the interest of time in the chat and or email us, because already we've got some really good points, some really good solutions, and that will help us start our policy brief for sharing with you guys in the future. Raja.
And I'll send you, I'll send you through an email as well. If you guys can respond back to anything else that you can think of, that would be amazing. Thank you. Raja, sorry.
Sorry, I had to put my hand down.
Oh,
no,
awesome.
Sorry about that. I'm just talking about the mammograms. Try that.
Yes.
Thanks, Raja. Jane.
Quickly, I haven't been in hospital, fingers crossed, and being healthy, which has been fabulous, touch wood. But I know when I had my spinal surgery, there was staffing levels that happened throughout hospital. But food was a real issue because the catering service would put the food down at the end of the bed on the tray, but you couldn't move to get your food. And then you weren't able to feed yourself. And often someone would come in and say, why didn't you eat your meal? And you'd say, what meal? I don't even know where that is. So again, it came down to staffing levels, and people with spinal cord injuries who can't then reach are in real difficulty, because when you speak to the catering deliverers, they say, that's not my role. I just put the food out. And then the nurses, you speak to them and they say, well, I'm too busy with the medical side. So there was a real gap in that area. I don't know if it's the same now, but I can't imagine it's changed much.
Yeah.
Thanks,
and
Jane.
fundamental, you need to eat to improve your health.
Yeah. Thank you, Jane. And again, a very actionable, you know, that's something that could be actioned quite easily with a bit of planning. I know I can see Duncan's affordability support have a new CME program for GPs to give proper guidance on SCI medicine. So that, yeah, I actually knew about that, and that is a really important, I haven't really reviewed it recently, but a really important resource as well, because I hear same.
Everybody should encourage their doctors to go do it. They have to do CME points anyway. That's,
yeah, we should share some information about that actually, because possibly GPs aren't always hearing, and that you're the best resource to get that information out. Thank you, Duncan. All right, I don't want to shut this chat because it's so amazing. At the same time, I know you probably all have places to be. So I'd just like to sort of wrap up the meeting by thanking you all. Thanking you, Duncan, for sharing your knowledge. Really appreciate it. I think we should get you on every year just to have an update. Thank you, Tony, for sharing the ambulance. I hear that a lot, so I think that's a really important resource. And thank you all for sharing your health issues. Please continue to share. We'll share with you, the policy brief, and we'll use what you tell us to inform our priorities and our advocacy actions. So it's much appreciated. And thank you. It's nice to see all of your faces in this forum, and have a nice afternoon. Hope everyone stays warm.
Thank you, everybody.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.